Hi, guys, and welcome to the Horror Room. So, this week I thought of a very interesting idea that kind of came out of nowhere. Um, I was, just browsing through the internet and I saw an interesting article about someone digging up a time capsule from the 90s and kind of like going through the items like, oh, wow, this is so weird. Um, and I thought, you know what? That's kind of a cool, interesting idea, but like, what if we did it for horror? But, how do you choose? There's so much good stuff in horror. Like, do you leave stuff that's like, this is an important piece of horror history for the future to look at? Or do you try and personalize it so they can kind of get an idea of what you were about? And obviously, if you're having a time capsule with certain things like that, you would write a note. I didn't write a note or anything. We're not going to go too deep into it. But I mean, obviously, if I did, I would explain each item and what it means. So I'm just going to give you the rundown for the items and why I'm including them. Um, Now, obviously, I'm not going to take all these items and bury them in the backyard. I'm not stupid. Um, and obviously, you'd want something a little more secure and safe for a time capsule. But for this, I'm just using an example because we don't want, like, I could use a freaking tote or, a safe or something like that. That's insane. But usually, if you make a time capsule, you want it to be something small, something simple. So I decided, like, hey, let's do 5 items. And we're using this animatronic ghost box, just as a haha. Like, this is our time capsule. Um, so we're going to see what items are going in here and why they're going in here. So first off, I said, you know what? If you're a horror collector, most horror collectors collect like memorabilia or figures, things of that sort. And, a NECA figure would take up like half the box. I mean, I could use my opened Halloween 3 figures, but I'm not super sentimental about those. And I could use an open set for what I'm going to put in there, but I figured, hey, if I want them to know what I'm all about, I gotta throw in a sealed Mighty Max. So we got Vamp Biter, which is a horror head, perfect for a horror time capsule. Vamp Biter was like my favorite playset growing up. It's got the bat. It's really awesome artwork. So I figured, you know what, this shows them that, hey, like, not only do I like collecting horror stuff, I grew up with horror stuff, and I could give them like a loose one. I could give them the Cyclops with the eyeball, but there's nothing like actually holding something from someone's childhood in your hands and getting to see, like, why were they so interested in it. And right away from the packaging, I mean, come on, what kid wouldn't want to see this awesomeness on the shelf? You flip it over, you got like a little comic book, you get previews of other horror heads, like, perfect. So this is going to go right here in my horror time capsule. Now, I'm not going to try and close it because some of this is sticking out of it. So we're just going to pretend that everything fits in here correctly. So don't at me. So next, one of the other things I love to collect besides movies is masks. And, obviously that's not a great idea because masks take up a ton of room. And, obviously one of these masks is not going to fit in the box. I do have a hockey mask that's very simple, but it's a little derpy. And I figured if I'm going to go the simple route with a mask, I do got all these Scream masks, but Scream's not really a franchise that, is something I'm like, I have to share with the world. Some people it is, but, not me. But I firmly believe that some of the funnest masks to own are just the simple old school ones. And one for me that personally I've always loved and I always try and keep is, just your standard glow in the dark skeleton mask, the Grim Reaper, if you will. Now, yeah, it's got the tags on there, but, I could throw in a loose one. So we're going to pretend that that's what this is because, collecting masks is fun. And, I think the simple stuff is just great for decorating. Obviously, if you have, art to clowns or Michael Myers masks or zombies. Those can be fun too, but like I said, we want to fit it into the time capsule. And to me, this encapsulates. It captures. Let's just use a simple term. That era before Spirit Halloween was like the only Halloween store. Um, those little pop up Halloween shops that would just come into your area. I know locally we had an old Blockbuster that once it shut down, anytime Halloween rolled around, that thing was the go to place for Halloween stuff. And they used to have all the masks up top. These were like the more affordable options for like kids and stuff. Uh, Not to say that I really had this growing up, but it just reminds me of that time. And I think it's a fun inclusion to say, you know what, just remember the simple stuff. Sometimes that's all you need when it comes to horror. So we're going to put this mask in the time capsule. Now we've got room for a couple movies. So I figured we would divide it up into the three basic categories. We're obviously not going to stick a laser disc in this thing. Plus, I don't think the future would be like, oh yeah, we got to watch it on Laserdisc. So I figured we'd stick with VHS, DVD, and a boutique / Blu-ray. So starting with the VHS, I said, you know what? There's so many options. Like, what do you choose? Do you choose an obscure movie? Do you choose a fan favorite? Again, we're trying to do something personal, but I also wanted to capture the uniqueness of the VHS era of horror. And there was nothing more eye-catching and unique than the big box horror movies. And I do have a clamshell now, but I said, you know what? I better choose my personal one, and that's Class Reunion Massacre. Now, as you can see, compared to a regular VHS, this one stands out a lot more. And that's why I have such a fond memory of movies like this, especially this one, because, you know, back in the day when I would go with my parents and they would be shopping for groceries, I'd be running to the video section, looking at the games, but mostly looking at the horror movies. And this is the one that always just scared me. And you know, when you're that kid that, you know, can't resist, you're going to pick it up, you're going to look at the back, and it's like, oh, it's probably not the craziest things to see, but, you know, the clown in the shower, you see blood, you're like, ah. Now, is this the best movie? No, not really. I like it, though, and I mean, I really like it. I still need to do a video about it. I know. It's coming, don't worry. But, you know, like I said, this captures sorry, that era of the VHS rentals where it's like you could walk in and just see awesome videos everywhere, like stuff that today goes for hundreds of dollars. And it's like if you got the movie on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever, cool. You don't need to spend $200 to get a tape. I bought this. This is probably the most expensive one I have of this version. But it means something to me, and that's, at the end of the day, all you really need. So, big box version of Class Reunion Massacre, that's going in here. I'm going to have to get real creative to fit the last two in here. So next, I decided to include a DVD. Now, DVD represents the transition from tape, where any movie you could think of was a possibility. I mean, there's still a lot of movies that were trapped on VHS. To my knowledge, there's a lot of them. But, you know, we're getting there. There's a lot of boutique labels that are releasing movies that even I've never heard of that I'm like, okay, I'll check that out. A lot of, you know, fan films, people that made their own movies, which I think is great. I've sang the praises of Visual Vengeance before, who released Abomination. What's the other one I have? The Necrophiles. There's a bunch of them. So I was like, I could use one of those, but, you know, I would still rather stick with something personal. And, you know, when it comes to VHS movies, this is a movie that I didn't really see on VHS. I saw it on recording that my aunt had for me off of TNT, Up All Night. And I think I saw the censored versions of these movies. So I was like, you know what? why not include one that's really close to my heart that I love even more than Class Reunion Massacre? That's like a memory that I love, specifically based off the experience. This is based off the movie itself, and we got to put a banger in there. We got to put the original Toxic Avenger. If this movie doesn't capture you right from the beginning and get you like, oh, this is going to be a fun ride, is it the best representation of horror specifically? Not entirely. But it is a fun movie. It has horrific moments. It has, drama, action. And I think, this is one that it's a no-brainer. Like, if I was setting someone up with like 5 or 10 horror movies for their collection, I'd have to give them Toxic Avenger because a lot of people, strangely enough, haven't seen it when it comes to new horror fans. Most old horror fans will swear by this film, not so much the sequels, and there's a reason why. It's a great movie. So yeah, I'd be putting the unrated Toxic Avengers DVD, or Toxic Avenger, not the Toxic Crusaders. And lastly, a boutique movie. I thought about a box set, but we got limited space in here, so I'm not going to be putting like the Friday the 13th box set or, Faces of Death. We don't want to scare them away from horror. And there's a lot of boutique movies, like I have The Deadly Spawn, I have The Hills Have Eyes, we got Pieces, Motel Hell. Like, how do you choose? There's so many obscure, awesome movies. Why not give them something that shows them a bunch of these other movies so they can be like, hey, this movie looks interesting. And one series that does that really well is In Search of Darkness. And I specifically chose part 2 because I think in part 1 they padded out with a lot of films that everyone's seen. And at least in my opinion, part 2 has a lot of the more obscure movies. Plus it has a lot of cult movies in there. It's got a good blend of stuff that people have heard of, but also stuff that you might not have heard of at all. Plus, I mean, that artwork is just fantastic. Shows a lot of like things jumping out of the televisions. And this is a good reference guide to where if you're like, I've never seen a lot of these movies, I want to get a taste of what they're about. You can watch a trailer, of course, but I think this is a more fun, informative way to do it. And this would be a good way to show them like, hey, not only do I have these memories of going to the movie stores and, watching them as they evolved onto DVD, I have, added to my collection, information. So I can say, hey, there's some movies on here I've never heard of. I should seek these out and check them out. And I think that's a good sign for any horror fan that they're open to trying new experiences, maybe even from decades before. It's not always about the new movies. It's not about, the comfort movies. It's about finding more to experience and share with other horror fans. And I think this is a very good example of how to do that. The people who made this film and the other two, they've gone on to make the In Search of Darkness 90s ones. I don't have either one of those. If I found them for a good price, I'd probably do it. And I do have the cult movie one, which I'm going to be reviewing when I get it. As of filming this right now, I don't have it. But once I do, I'm going to film that episode. I think I have the digital copy, but, if I have a physical copy, I like to show you guys and make sure like, I'm legit watching it and reviewing it. So, this is going to go in the time capsule. So, let's assume that Mighty Max wasn't going to get bent and we could close this thing up. I think this would be a pretty good interpretation of what horror means to me, the kind of things that I'm into that I want to share with others. Let me know down below, what would be 5 things that you would put in your horror time capsule? And what would these items mean to you personally? Don't be afraid to post something long. I will read it. I will, reply if I, think I need to reply or want to reply. But if I don't reply, I'll at least like it, let you know I've read it. Because I think this is a interesting idea, and I think I'd like to see other creators do it. I wouldn't like be as bold to say I'm the first person to think of this idea, but maybe it's not something that a lot of people are doing, and I think it's a good idea and it's a fun idea. So hopefully you guys think it's a fun one too. I just wanted to do something a little change of pace this week, get away from like the horror movie reviews and uh, do something that's not so much a discussion about a franchise or a certain thing, but just like a general talk of like what horror means to you and me personally, and why, and certain things that represent that love for horror that myself and a lot of other people have. So I appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully, you guys think this is a fun idea. Maybe I'll do it again in the future and switch things up. Maybe we'll do a bigger time capsule with like 10 items, or maybe we'll keep it simple, but we'll change up the items that are included. Let me know. What would you guys rather see? Another simple time capsule or a bigger one? Like maybe we'll do that one down the line. But I thought this was a fun idea, and I just wanted to do it because I was like, hey, that's great. Like I feel like if I was to give this box to someone and they didn't enjoy what was in it, then horror is not for you. Because this represents a lot of fun things about horror. But hey, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next week.